Let me ask you something. Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and felt like there was a whole story hidden there? A story they weren't telling you, but you could somehow feel. Have you ever sat across from a woman and wondered, what has she been through? What made her the way she is? Why does her love feel guarded? Or why does her laughter sound free? Most men think the only way to know is to ask. They believe they need to dig, interrogate, demand answers. But here's the truth. If you have to ask, you've already missed it. Because a woman's past doesn't live in her words, it lives in her presence. It lives in her patterns. It lives in her energy, her silences, her contradictions, the way she treats you, the way she pulls back, the way she leans in. The greatest men don't uncover stories by force. They discover them by awareness. They see without pressing. They listen without questions. They pay attention to what's unspoken. And because of that, they'll learn more about a woman than words could ever reveal. And that's what I want to give you today. Not tricks, no interrogation tactics, but the wisdom to see, the patience to understand, that presents to discover a woman's past without asking her a single thing. Because if you can do that, you won't just know her history, you'll earn her trust. And that trust is worth more than any answer you can ever demand. People often think discovering someone's past means digging, questioning, or playing detective. But the truth is, the human soul doesn't need to be interrogated. It leaks its story in every gesture, every pause, every smile, and even every silence. A woman's past isn't a locked book you need to break into. It's written all over her energy, the way she walks into a room, the way her eyes shift when she speaks, the way her laughter either flows freely or gets caught in her throat. You don't need to ask her happen to you if you're present and auto see what's already there. Have you ever noticed how some people light up the entire room when they walk in? They radiate warmth, openness, a sense of ease that doesn't just happen. Energy, the product of a past where love was received, where trust was built, where wounds were healed enough to let light shine through. On the other hand, you've also seen people who enter a room and carry with them a subtle heaviness. They don't even say a word, but their energy speaks. They've been hurt. They've been guarded. They've built invisible walls around themselves. You see, every woman carries her history not just in her mind, but in her energy. And if you learn how to read it, you'll discover more than any question could ever reveal. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're sitting across from a woman at dinner. She's laughing, telling stories, and on the surface, everything seems fine. But then you notice that whenever the conversation drifts toward vulnerability, when the subject shifts to family, dreams, or love, her shoulders tighten just slightly. Her smile becomes more controlled, and her eyes avoid direct contact for a moment. There is her past speaking without a word. She's telling you, I've been there before. I've trusted before, and it didn't end well. You didn't need to ask her about heartbreak. Her energy already told you she's been through it. This is why presence matters more than pressure. Most men rush to ask questions. So what happened with your last relationship? Or why don't you talk to your father? But the more you push, the more guarded she becomes because her past is sacred ground. It's not something to be extracted. It's a thing to be honored. And the only way she'll let you see is if you prove that you can handle what she's not even saying. Energy is truth before words are spoken. Think about it, How many times have you met someone who says they're fine, but you just know they're not? That's because the body speaks louder than language. A woman may say, I'm okay, but her tone will crack. Her eyes will look the silent language of history away, or her voice will lower. That's her past whispering through her energy. If you want to discover her history, you didn't listen to her words first. You listened to her energy. Now, here's where it becomes powerful. You have to train yourself to slow down. Most people miss these details because they're too busy thinking about their next line, their next move, their own insecurities. But if you truly slow down and give your full attention, you'll start to notice. You'll notice how quickly she changes subjects when something hits too close to home. You'll notice how she leans in when she feels safe and how she pulls back when old scars are touched. You'll notice how some of her laughter feels free, but other moments feel forced, as if she's laughing to cover pain. These are not random behaviors. They're echoes of her past. Let me share a story. I once knew a woman who carried herself with so much strength. People often said she was intimidating. She spoke with authority, walked with purpose, and had an unshakable presence. But if you paid closer attention, you'd notice that when someone showed her real kindness, simple, genuine kindness, her eyes would soften almost like a child. In that softness, you could see her past. You could tell she hadn't received much tenderness. That strength was not her nature, but her armor. Without her saying a word, her energy revealed her story, a past where she had to fight for herself, protect herself, and rarely let her guard down. And that's the beauty of learning to read energy. You see the person beneath the persona. But let me tell you this, discovering her past through her energy is not about judgment. It's about compassion. Too many men use this knowledge as a tool to manipulate. Think if I know her wounds, I can use them. No, that's weakness. A real man uses this awareness to offer presence, patience, and understanding. Because when you see her past, you're not just looking at her history. You're looking at her survival, and survival deserves respect. Think about the Stoics for a moment. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look." That applies not only to yourself, but also to how you view others. When you look well into her energy, you're not just discovering her past. You're seeing her strength, endurance, the source that carried her here. And that's far more valuable than knowing every detail of her story. Here's what's remarkable, Dot, when a woman feels you can read her without forcing her to explain. She begins to trust you on a deeper level, Becca, as you've shown her. You're not interested in interrogating her wounds. You're interested in understanding her humanity. And that kind of presence is rare. Anyone can ask questions. Few can listen without words. So how do you cultivate this? You practice stillness. You put away distractions. You observe without judgment. You allow silence instead of filling them. You listen not just to what she says, but to how she says it. You study the spaces between her words. This is not about suspicion. It's about connection. And the more you practice, the more fluent you become in the language of energy. And here's the paradox. The less you ask, the more you will know. Because when she feels safe, her energy will eventually open up. She will tell you her past, not through answer to your question, but through the natural unfolding of her presence. Trust me, if you give her the space to be, one day she'll laugh in a way that suddenly breaks and she'll say, "You know, I used to never laugh like this because I didn't feel free." And in that moment, you'll realize you didn't ask, but you discovered her past. So remember this. A woman's past is hidden in her energy. Her history is carried in her pauses, her defenses, her openness, her silences. You don't need to dig. You patterns that speak louder than words don't need to demand. You need to see. And when you learn to see, you'll understand her in ways that words can never express. Patterns, they're either here in life in the way people speak, in the choices they make, and how they react to pressure and how they handle joy. And when it comes to discovering a woman's past without asking, patterns are your greatest compass because people don't usually repeat history with their words. They repeat it with their actions. Words are what they want you to hear. Patterns are what the truth wants you to see. If you want to know someone's history, don't focus only on the stories they tell. Look at what they consistently do. Look at what they avoid. Look at what they can't help but fall back into. Because patterns are the fingerprints of the past. They reveal wounds that were never fully healed, beliefs that were formed in childhood, defenses that were built through heartbreak. And the incredible part is most people don't even realize that they're showing you their patterns. It just slips out like a signature they can't help but assign. Let me give you an example. You're dating a woman, and every time conflict arises, she either shuts down completely or becomes unusually defensive. That's not random, that's a pattern. And patterns are always rooted in something deeper. Maybe she grew up in a home where conflict was unsafe, where raising your voice meant danger, or where silence meant punishment. Or maybe her past relationships taught her that speaking up only led to rejection. Without her telling you the story, her pattern is revealing. Is she showing you that her past shaped the way she handles confrontation? You didn't have to ask what happened to you. All you had to do was pay attention to the pattern. Here's another. Maybe you notice she has a habit of constantly over-explaining herself, even in small things like why she chose a certain restaurant or why she's late by 5 minutes. That's a pattern too. And it whispers about a past where she probably felt she had to justify everything to be accepted. Maybe with a critical parent, maybe with a partner who doubted her every choice. She may never say it outright, but the past is alive in the present, written in her need to explain herself. That's how patterns speak louder than words. Now, here's the challenge. Mossmen ignore patterns because they're too focused on moments. They look at one outburst, one withdrawal, one reaction, and think it's isolated. But nothing is isolated. If you see it once, it might be chance. If you see it twice, it's tendency. If you see it 3 times, it's a pattern. And patterns don't lie. They tell you everything you need to know about where someone has been. Think about your own life. Think about how you handle rejection, how you handle success, how you handle love. Isn't it true that those responses didn't appear out of nowhere? They were shaped by your past experiences, by the stories you've lived through, by the lessons, good and bad, that carved your character. The same is true for her. If she avoids vulnerability, that's not an accident. If she clings too tightly, that's not an accident. If she can't let go of control, that's not an accident. These are patterns. Behind every pattern is mastery. And here's the wisdom. You don't need to ask her to tell you the story if you already see the pattern, because patterns are honest. A person might deny their past with their words, but their patterns always confess it. Now, this doesn't mean you sit there like a detective analyzing every move. That's not presence, that's paranoia. What I'm saying is live in awareness. Pay attention, connect the dots. And then instead of judging her patterns, understand them, because judgment closed doors, but understanding opens them. Imagine you notice a woman struggles to receive compliments. Every time you tell her, "You look beautiful today," she deflects. She laughs it off. She changes subject. That's not just humility, that's a pattern. And that pattern tells you that maybe in her past she wasn't affirmed enough. Or worse, maybe she was affirmed in ways that were manipulative. So now kindness feels suspicious without a single question. You already understand that her relationship with praise has a history, and that gives you power to respond, not with frustration. Why won't you just take a compliment, but with patience? You become the man who sees her beyond her pattern. Seneca once said, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." Patterns are proof of that. What you see in her today is not created today. It's continuation of an earlier story. Her reactions to love, her fears of abandonment, her eagerness to please, her hesitations to trust. All of it comes from another beginning, another chapter. You don't need to read the old chapter word for word. You just need to notice how the story echoes in this new one. But let me challenge you here. When you start seeing patterns, don't just ask what they say about her past. Ask what they demand of you in the present. Emotional walls versus open doors. If her pattern is fear, do you bring safety? If her pattern is control, do you bring steadiness? If her pattern is insolence, do you bring patience instead of pressure? That's how you trans awareness into wisdom. Because the truth is, the past is not just about her. It becomes about you too. How you respond to her patterns will determine whether you repeat the story or rewrite it. You get angry at her defensiveness. You reinforce her fear. If you abandon her when she clings, you reinforce her belief in abandonment. But if you stand steady, if you remain grounded, if you become the calm presence her past never gave her, you don't just discover her past, you help heal it. And that, my friend, is the highest calling of a man. Not to interrogate, not to expose, not to use, but to see, to understand, and to stand firm. Because life will show you patterns, but love is what transforms them. Let me share one more story. A man I knew once dated a woman who was constantly anxious about him leaving, even small things. If he didn't reply to a message quickly, if he went a few hours without calling, she would spiral into worry. He could have dismissed it as too much. He could have said, she's just insecure, but instead he paid attention to the pattern. He realized this was not about him. It was about her past. She had been abandoned before, left without explanation. And the wound was still alive in her. And instead of reacting with frustration, he responded with reassurance. He became consistent. He became patient. He became safe. And slowly her pattern began to shift. Her fear of abandonment started to heal. Not because he asked about her past, but because he understood what her pattern was telling him. That's the power of patterns. They don't just reveal history. They give you the chance to shape the future. So remember this, people lie with words, but patterns don't lie. They are the truest confession of the past. If you want to discover a woman's history without asking her a single thing, watch her patterns. Watch how she loves, how she fights, how she laughs, how she withdraws, how she returns. That is her purpose speaking to you. And if you learn to see it, not with judgment, but with understanding, you'll unlock a level of connection most men will never reach. Love is not created in the moment. Love is remembered. The way a woman loves you is not just about you. It's about everything she's lived before you. Every relationship she's had, every heartbreak, every moment of trust or betrayal, every time she was held or every time she was dropped. It all shapes the way she shows up for you now. And this is what many men miss. They think, if she loves me, it's because of who I am. And yes, part of it is you, but much of it is her reflection. She's not only responding to you, she's responding to her past through you. Her way of loving you is a mirror of everything she's learned about love before you ever entered the picture. If you really want to discover her past without asking, pay attention to how she treats you when she loves you. Pay attention to the tenderness she gives or the hesitation she holds back. Pay attention to whether her love feels free or whether it feels careful, because those choices are not born in the moment. They are echoes of her history. For example, if a woman showers you with affection but gets nervous when you didn't immediately reciprocate, that's not about you forgetting to send a text. That's about past teaching her that love can be taken away suddenly. If she hesitates to lean on you even when she needs you, that's not about her being too independent. It's about her past teaching her that dependence is dangerous, that asking for help might have once been met with rejection. Her past is not written in her words. It's written in the way she loves you. The mirror doesn't lie. Here's the beautiful and challenging part. When a woman loves you, she is offering you not just her present self, but the sum of her past experiences. If her past was kind to her, she will love freely, openly, joyfully. If her past was harsh, her love may come with walls, hesitations, or fears. You don't need to ask her what happened to you. You just need to notice how she gives and how she holds back. That's the story right there. Let me tell you a story. A man once told me about his girlfriend who would always double check if he was okay, even when there was no reason to. If he was quiet for a minute, she would ask, "Are you upset with me?" If he didn't laugh at a joke, she would worry she'd done something wrong. On the surface, she was just being attentive. But if you look deeper, her love was telling the story of her past. Somewhere along the way, she had learned that love was fragile, that people could turn cold at any moment, and that she had to constantly earn affection to keep it. She never said this out loud, but her way of loving was a mirror of that history. And the man realized, I don't need to ask her why she's like this. I already know her past is speaking through the way she loves me. This is why awareness is so powerful. Too many men take things personally. They think, why doesn't she trust me? Or why is she so distant? Or why does she cling tightly? But the truth is, it's rarely about you. It's about the story she's carrying into the present. And if you want to discover her past, you stop taking it personally and reading energy and repetition, start seeing it compassionately. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "We cannot choose our external circumstance, but we can always choose how we respond to them." That wisdom applies here. You cannot choose the past she lived through, but you can choose how you respond to the love she gives you. You can respond with patience when her past makes her hesitant. You can respond with steadiness when her past makes her afraid. You can respond with openness when her past makes her guarded. And in doing so, you not only discover her past, you begin to help rewrite it. Think of it this way. Every act of love is a story being retold. If she withdraws when she feels vulnerable, that's her telling you, "In my past, being vulnerable wasn't safe." If she goes above and beyond to care for you almost too much, that's her telling you, "In my past, love was given only when it proved myself." If she keeps testing whether you'll stay, that's her telling you, "In my past, people left without warning." These are not just habits. They are chapters, and when you pay attention, you'll realize she's giving you access to her entire history, written not in words, but in love. But here is the part that requires strength. How you respond will determine whether her love remains shaped by her past or evolves into something new. If you meet her hesitation with frustration, you reinforce her fears. If you meet her over-erring with dismissal, you reinforce her belief that love must always be earned. But if you meet patterns with steadiness, kindness, and consistency, you show her a new story. You become the living proof that not all love repeats the past. And isn't that what love is supposed to be? Not just discovering someone's story, but becoming part of rewriting it. There's a saying, "The way we love is the way we were loved." And if that's true, then when you look at how a woman loves you, you are staring directly at the reflection of her past. She may not tell you the details, but she shows you every day. And the question is, do you have the courage to see it and the strength to respond with compassion? Now, let me be clear. This is not about fixing her. You are not her savior, and she is not broken. This is about awareness. It's about understanding that her love is layered, and those layers were built long before you. And if you see them clearly, you didn't just know her past, you know her soul. Let me give you one more example. Imagine a woman who finds it hard to say, "I love you." She avoids those words, maybe even jokes around them. At first, you might feel hurt. You might think, "She doesn't love me." But look closer. Maybe her past taught her that words are empty, that "I love you" can be said casually and broken easily. So instead of words, she shows her love through actions, making sure you're taken care of, standing by you in hard times, remembering the smallest details about you without asking a thing. You've discovered her past words once failed her, so now she trusts actions more. And if you see that, you won't doubt her love. You'll respect it. This is why I love a mirror. It reflects everything that came before. If her reflection feels free, her past allowed freedom. If her reflection feels cautious, her past demanded caution. If her reflection feels desperate, her past left her starving for security. And when you stop demanding explanations and start paying attention to the reflection, you'll discover her past without a single question. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If someone is mistaken, teach them kindly and show them the truth. Do not rail against them." In the same way, when her past shows up in her love through fear, hesitation, or overcompensation, you don't rail against her, you don't demand answers. You show her through your steadiness that love can be different. That's how you not only discover her purpose, you help her believe in a better future. So remember this. Every time she loves you, she is telling you a story about her past. Every time she fears, hesitates, gives, withdraws, clings, or opens up, she's giving you glimpses of everything that shaped her. You don't need to pry. You don't need to interrogate. You just need to watch the mirror of how she loves you. And when you see it clearly, when you listen with your heart instead of your questions, you'll discover her history not as facts, but as feelings. And those feelings will tell you more than any direct answer ever could. We live in a world that worships words. We think the truth is always spoken, that meaning is always found in language. But the reality is words are often the weak carriers of truth. People hide behind them, polish them, rehearse them, use them as shields. What rarely lies is silence. What rarely lies is body language. What rarely lies are contradictions between what someone says and what they cannot help but show. If you want to truly discover a woman's past without asking her anything, you must learn to listen beyond words. Most men don't know how to do this. They listen to her sentences, but they miss the pauses. They hear her laughter, but they don't notice if it sounds forced. They focus on her answers, but not on the speed at which she gives them. They're too busy waiting for the next line, instead of listening for what's between the lines. But life speaks whispers, not shouts. If you slow down enough, if you open your awareness, why direct questions fail, you'll start to hear the language that doesn't use words at all. For example, imagine she says, "I don't really think about my past much," but as she says it, her eyes flicker down for just a second. Her tone lowers, her body shifts in the air. Right there. Her silence told you everything, her words denied. She thinks about it often. Maybe it still weighs on her. Maybe it still shapes her. But her body admitted what her mouth refused. You didn't ask a question, yet you discovered the truth. That's what listening beyond words is all about. Silence is not empty. Silence is loaded with information. When someone suddenly goes quiet, it is rarely random. It often means they're holding back, protecting something, or reliving a memory they're not ready to share. A woman may not tell you about a painful chapter, but her hesitation when you touch that subject is already her answer. Don't need to push further. The silence told you enough. But here's the thing. You need emotional courage to sit with silence. Most men panic when a conversation goes quiet. They rush to fill it with chatter, jokes, or more questions. But if you want to really listen beyond words, you must become comfortable with silence, because silence is often the moment the soul speaks. If you're too quick to fill it, you'll never hear it. Think about how she reacts when you give her space. Does she lean into it, or does she grow restless? Does she use silence to connect, or does she use it to hide? These are not random behaviors. They're reflections of her past. If she avoids silence, maybe silence was once a punishment in her childhood. If she cherishes silence, maybe she would up in chows and values peace. Again, no questions needed, just awareness. Now, let's talk about contradictions because they are the clearest indicators of the past. Contradictions are when her words and her actions don't align. For instance, she may say, "I don't care about commitment," but her actions show jealousy when you give attention elsewhere. Or she may say, "I'm fine on my own," yet her entire body is soft and when you show her care. Contradictions reveal the battles between who she wants to be and who her past has taught her to hope. If you learn to see those contradictions, you discover her deepest history. Not the story she wants to tell, but the one her life is still carrying. Let me tell you a story. A man once dated a woman who always insisted, "I don't like emotional conversations. I'm just not that type." On the surface, that was her truth. But you look closer, every time he gently leaned into vulnerability, when he shared something raw about himself, her eyes softened, her attention sharpened, and she leaned just a little closer. Her words said, "I don't like emotions," but her silence, her eyes, her body all said, "I crave this, but my past has made me afraid of it." And by listening beyond her words, he discovered a history of emotional neglect. Without her confessing a single thing, her silence told him everything. And here's what separates strong men from weak men. Weak men hear the contradiction and get frustrated. They say, "She's confusing. She doesn't know what she wants. She's complicated." Strong men recognize that contradictions are simply the scars of history. They don't fight them. They don't demand clarity. They offer steadiness because they know that the unspoken is where the truth lives. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." But those colors don't always show up in words. They bleed into behavior, into silence, into hesitation, into contradictions. If you only listen to words, you're blind to the real painting. If you learn to listen beyond them, the canvas reveals itself. And here's another level. Even joy speaks volumes. It's not just the silences and contradictions that matter. The way she expresses joy tells you just as much about her past. Her laughter is loud, free, unrestrained. It often means she's known freedom before. If her laughter feels cautious, measured, like she's checking if it's too much, it may mean she was once judged for her joy. Even joy has memory. Every expression carries history. Now, let me be clear. This is not about psychoanalyzing her every move. It's not about turning into a detective. It's about respect. It's about realizing that her unspoken lang deserves as much attention as her spoken one. It's about slowing down enough to notice, caring enough to read, and being strong enough to hold space for what her silence reveals. Because here's the truth. When a woman feels youth, art of gentle awareness, can hear what she doesn't say, you give her one of the rarest gifts, a sense of being truly understood. Most people only listen to respond. Very few listen to hear, and fewer still listen to what is unspoken. But if you can do that, you become unforgettable Dot, because in her eyes, you're not just a man who talks, you're a man who sees. And that brings me to the heart of it. Listening beyond words isn't just about discovering her past. It's about building trust. When she sees that you don't pressure her with questions, that you don't force her to relive pain, that you can already see and honor what she hasn't said, she begins to trust you with the parts of herself she usually hides. And that's when she will eventually share. Not because you asked, but because she feels safe. Safety is key. A woman will never give you her story if she feels she has to. But she will offer it willingly if she feels you've already seen her in silence and accept it anyway. And that acceptance will mean more than any question you could ever ask. So here's what I leave you with. Words are not enough. Words are the surface. If you want to discover the truth, if you want to know her past, if you want to really see her, must learn to listen to the silences, to the hesitations, to the contradictions, tough laughter that's too careful, to the tears that fall too fast, to the pauses that last too long. That's where her purpose lives. That's where her soul speaks. And when you can hear that without forcing, without demanding, without judging, you will know her more deeply than any man who ever tried to interrogate her. You will not only discover her past, you will honor it. And that is what builds real connection, Dot. So After everything we've explored, here's what I want you to remember. You didn't discover a woman's past by prying into it. You don't need to demand answers. You don't need to interrogate her history. It's some test she has to pass. Her past is already here. It's solid in her energy. It's breathing in her patterns. It's reflected in the way she loves you. It's written in her silences and her contradictions and the spaces between her words. The question is not, will she tell me her past? The real question is, am I present enough to see it without her having to say it? That's what separates ordinary men from extraordinary men. Ordinary men ask blunt questions and then complain when they don't get honest answers. Extraordinary men develop presence. They see without pressure. They understand without interrogation. They listen without words. And because of that, they are trusted with a level of intimacy that questions could never reach. But let me leave you with this. What you do with the knowledge matters more than discovering it. If you see her patterns and judge her, you close her heart. If you hear silences and weaponize them, you betray her trust. But if you notice her energy, her love, her contradictions, and respond with patience, with steadiness, with strength, you don't just discover her past, you help heal it. And that is what makes a man unforgettable. So don't be the man who demands stories. Be the man who sees the unspoken. Don't be the man who wants answers. Be the man who offers safety. Don't be the man who breaks down walls just to peek inside. Be the man whose presence makes her want to open the door herself. Because in the end, discovering her past is not about curiosity. It's about compassion. It's about honoring the journey that shaped her. And when she feels that you see her fully, not because she told you everything, but because you paid attention, she will give you a gift that no amount of questioning could ever earn her trust. And when you earn that trust, you realize something powerful. You didn't closing wisdom, presence over pressure, just learn her past. You became part of her future. So carry this with you. Real strength is not in asking everything. Real strength is in seeing what's already there. Real strength is in listening beyond words. Real strength is in being steady enough to hold her story without demanding it. And if you can doff it, not only will you discover her past, you will write a new chapter with her that no past could ever erase. That is the power of presence. That is the power of understanding. That is the power of being a man who doesn't ask, but what truly sees.